A very, very good evening and warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows. And welcome to a rather different location for the show this week. As you can see, I'm not in the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar, nor am I on a wine estate or in a glamorous restaurant. I am, however, in the home of some of the finest food in South Africa. And I'm not just saying that on the off chance that she is listening. I'm saying that because she tries to feed me with vast amounts of it very happily on a regular basis. This is the home of my father-in-law and mother-in-law in Virginia in the Free State, and the Nicol family are down for a long Easter weekend, which has allowed me to set up here and have a few relaxed glasses of wine this evening while the grandparents take care of my children and my wife takes care of my wine stock, and leaves me to drink some wine this evening in conversation with three very, very cool people who have all got slightly different stories to tell. One has got a brand new job, one has got a brand new country, and one has got a brand new owner of the estate that he has stood guardian over for some time. So a lot of change on Dan Really Likes Wine this week, a lot of interest and a lot of great stories to tell as we head into the Easter weekend, and the chance of many people around South Africa to indulge a little in between all of the celebration and prepare for what I'm sure for many will be a big Easter Sunday lunch. So perhaps one or two tips for what to grab from Norman Goodfellows through the course of the show this evening. So who exactly are my guests? What are their new job, their new country, their new ownership style of their wine estate? Well, we'll find out in just a second. First of all, though, let's get the best of the wine news of the last few days. This is coming up at the end of the month. This is going to be at Southern Sun Rosebank. If you happen to be in Johannesburg, your chance to taste some wine from the Cape Winemakers Guild. And this is always a really cool opportunity. One of our guests today is part of the Cape Winemakers Guild, and it is the chance to select, to have a taste of some of that wine that has caught the ideas of apologies, it's not actually the Cape Winemakers Guild. That's coming up a little later. This is Michelangelo. There's so much happening at the moment. Haven't even had a glass of wine yet. This is the Michelangelo International Wine and Spirit Awards, and your chance the 21st, the 22nd of April, if you are in Johannesburg, the Southern Sun Rosebank, or the 26th and 27th at the Garden Court in Mhlanga, and your chance to taste wine that has featured prominently at the Michelangelo Awards. There'll be over 100 wine, spirits, Cap Classiques from estates you'll recognize, names like Bon Courage and Holden Mance, Natida, Selena, Durbanville Hills, Simonson, Neil Joubert, Babylon's Tour, and Lawrenceford, and many, many, many more. I hosted these awards a few years ago. They have an international judging panel who come through to make sure that it is the best possible collection of wines that are chosen, and they will all be on display. You can get tickets on the door, 200 Rand each. Alternatively, you can head to CompuTicket, 175 Rand for the Johannesburg one, or 150 if you are down in Durban. Either way, a really nice evening chasing some really fun wines. And also coming up, si vous avez d'aider avec le français and you make wine for a living, nos amis à l'Alliance Française will be able to help you. This is a wine course. They do l'Alliance Française, the benchmark of learning French around the world. But this is a course that is particularly geared at those people who are looking at learning French from a winemaking, wine presenting perspective. It's a 20-hour course over the space of just under 2 months, Mondays and Wednesdays at the Alliance Française. It's 2,600 Rand if you are attending that. I'm not sure if it includes any wine, but it does include a guide to speaking French with clients or with producers. If you're in the wine industry and you are engaging with people in France, or maybe you're selling wine to Mauritius or to West Africa or to other places where French is a language of choice, and I think this will be a really fun group. Details down there at the bottom for the Alliance Française on Stellenbosch. Bon chance si tu commences avec this particular course. and I hope it goes well. Chance to join us at Plaisir on Tuesday evening. This is for a tasting at Norman Goodfellows. Your chance to come along, meet some of the wine. I was down at Plaisir about 2 weeks ago. There's a direct link to Plaisir with another of our guests this evening, which we'll discover in just a moment. This was Plaisir de Merle, for those of you of a slightly older vintage, which would only be a couple of years really since Rose Jordan took it over, shortened it down to Plaisir, and is picking up on the fine winemaking tradition of a vast estate. It's almost 1,000 hectares down in that triangle between Paarl, Stellenbosch, and Franschhoek. They're continuing to make terrific wine, and we'll be tasting some of that at Norman Goodfellows in 4 ways on Tuesday evening. Details on the Norman Goodfellows website if you'd like to RSVP and come along. There's no charge, just a chance to drink some wine and hang out with me and the team from Plaisir on Tuesday evening next week. There we go. It's a nice short burst of wine news this evening. Got a few people watching already from around the world. Samantha Nadir, nice. Enjoy the Easter weekend. Thank you, Samantha. Certainly will. And Petra Peterson is watching. Hey, happy Easter weekend to you all. Well, we send you into the Easter weekend on the back of the company of 3 people from the South African wine industry who've got some great stories to tell, particularly of late, because all of them have lives that have just changed ever so slightly. One of them has gone from being part of a family legacy working at Siemensach to now taking the step up to an executive role at Zoetendal. One of them has just sold a great South African wine estate to a French company. Why has he done it? What was the motivation and what happens next? Jeff Grier from Villiera joins us. And we also have the man from Plaisir, except he's not from Plaisir anymore. After a relatively short stint, Tim Whitfield received a terrific opportunity to make some wine in Croatia, and that is where we find him on the show today. So a warm welcome on Dan Really Likes Wine to Denzel Swarts, to Jeff Grier, and to Tim Whitfield. Guys, welcome. Lovely to have you all on the show, and thank you for joining us as we head into the Easter weekend with some wine expertise from all 3 of you, and much celebration for different reasons. I think starting with Denzel, because usually that smile is pretty permanent. I'm not sure I've seen you without the famous Denzel Swarts smile, but even bigger at the moment because you've got this incredible opportunity, very exciting opportunity, but also for me, one that is enormously well-deserved. And I think it's Zoetendal even happier than you because they've scored a real coup here. Tell us about this new role and what prompted you deciding that this was the one for you, Denzel.
Hi, Dan. Thank you very much for inviting me on the show. I think for me, the amazing part of moving to Zoetendal was the fact that I'm now able to start applying my business of wine course that I studied at UCT on a more broader scale, and also decision making. And I think that for me it's a real valuable tool to kind of explore my studies, but also to be able to start in a new region, which is quite an exciting region in Elim, and with a young brand to really start off new, build new processes in place, and to be able to showcase the best of what Elim has in the region.
It's a region that is on the up, and it's one that I think has got a very exciting future, not just because you are now part of it. It's very different to where you and your family have called home for some time, though, because the Swarts family and Siemensach are pretty much synonymous. For those people who don't know the history of your family and why you're so closely linked, tell us a little bit about the Swarts at Siemensach and how close that estate will always be to you and your family.
Yeah, Dan, I think it's close to my heart, not just the fact that I was born on the farm, but the fact that my grandfather worked there, my parents worked there, and eventually I decided to join the family business. And I say the family business because Simon's was a real family with the Malans and its workers. And so for me, joining that family was already quite a big achievement at the level where I got introduced into it. So Simonsa will always have a part of my heart. Yeah.
which would have made it even harder, I'm sure, to say goodbye. And so you would have thought long and hard about this role. What was it about the opportunity that was so good that you said, right, it's time to move on, and I'm going to grab this one and go with it?
Yeah, then I think when you at an estate for close to 15 years, and I was for 5 years away, in and out of South Africa, but then back 11 years with Simonsig, you kind of get into a space where you really ask yourself, what is the growth for you further on in the industry? And it's nice to understand Simonsig as a business and the wine and the traditions and the family values. But there comes a point in time where you really need to say, but how do I grow further than that? And understanding also other regions, but explore new things and new business culture. And I think for me, the main decision at the end, or critical thing that added to my decision to move, was the fact that both I was moving into more senior management, but also the fact that Zoetendal has very similar values to that of mine. And I think it's important that one looks at those values and the corporate culture and the opportunity to grow further. And that was primarily the decision making.
So you've got this new job. We can see it's a sales and brand executive. That can mean all sorts of things in corporate speak. But what exactly are you going to be doing? What is the weight on your shoulders? What is the mandate for you at Zoetendal?
Yeah, so then we're a very small team, and you can imagine when you're the new farm in a very small team, even though sales and brand is sort of the identifying title, you get to do all sorts of things. But I think the primary function of mine would be to position Zoetendal not just in the local market, but the international market as well, and to really start us getting the brand out in South Africa so that people get to know more about Zoetendal, get to taste the wines, and of course to position the brand. We are a boutique wine estate down in Elim. We own 6 hectares. And so to really start focusing on this exclusivity, the boutiqueness of the brand. But also, I think for a long time in South Africa, we've been talking about how do we position a wine that we get higher prices for wines. And at Zoetendal, the price range starts at 155. And majority of the wines are sitting just well over 200 Rand. So it's really an opportunity to position not just Zoetendal, but to position South African wines at a higher price point.
Well, the Zoetendal team are all watching excitedly. I can see, not sure who this is at the team, but hi, Dan. Lovely to have Denzel and a wine featured on your show. I'm sure you will enjoy our wine. Cheers. Well, I've got a glass of it, which I'm going to be having in a second. This is the Monarch. So I'm going to come back and find out a bit more about the wine offering. And what else is at the estate? Because it does look beautiful with plenty of reasons to go and visit. But let's first, though, head over to somebody else who's also had to say goodbye of sorts. You've wished Simonsig farewell, Jeff Grier. You've sort of kind of maybe said goodbye to Villiera. There was lots of excitement in the wine industry when the news came through. One of the great brands under the stewardship of one of our great winemakers, deciding French ownership was the way forward. Give us a bit of detail on this deal with Villiera and how that came about.
Yeah, Dan, thanks for the opportunity. It is a massive thing. Our family's been at Villiera for 40 years, but although it's a first-generation family wine business, it's actually a third-generation family business, and we've been looking at succession for the last 7 or 8 years, and more recently, as we get older, the 3 directors are currently close to retirement age. And as we get older, we had to take succession more seriously. And, we've been looking at our plans and talking to consultants. But, one of the options always in a succession plan is the option of a sale, especially when you're going into a fourth generation family business. But it wasn't really on the cards until we were approached by a very special company called Grier de France, GCF for short. They are looking to invest in South Africa, and they invested in Neutlingshof last year, and they were looking for a bubbly business. And of course, there are not that many successful quality bubbly businesses in the Cape that are big enough for a company like that to invest in. So we were one of their options, and they came to us with a decent offer. And it's the kind of company that we really feel we can work with. They're also a family business. The Helfrich family, based in Alsace, started a business 50 years ago in Alsace, and it's grown into a massive wine business. 20% of the wine produced in France is from their cellars, and they focus a lot on sparkling wine. And this is in addition to their sparkling wine interest around the world. And they have access to global markets. They're involved in 138 countries around the world, and they really do have massive influence in the world of wine. They are a wine company, and for those reasons, a French wine company that's family owned sounded very attractive to us. And as a family, we decided to make the decision to sell as our succession plan. So, the family is looked after, but our staff particularly are looked after. And the opportunity for fresh investment and new growth and exposing a quality South African brand around the world in much greater detail than before is quite exciting, I think, for us and for the industry in general. And I think South Africans, particularly those in the Stellenbosch area, should be proud of the way international companies, particularly the French, are showing interest. It obviously proves that we are making quality in the Cape. It proves that we are pretty dedicated to our task here. The South African brand is becoming more and more desirable. And of course, the weaker rand still makes the purchase of a business here look attractive, even with the sort of problems that we have, like load shedding, etc. So, they are showing confidence in our country, and they have asked us to, the Grier family members who are directors of the business, to stay on for at least 3 years, which we've committed to, because they want a smooth transition. They want the family nature of our business to remain. And what really attracted them, in addition to the sparkling wine focus we have, is the sustainability credentials we have. And they have the same philosophies, and the fact that we are quite green. We have a massive tree planting project. We generate solar energy for most of our power requirements. And on the social side, we accommodate the Pebbles program, and we also have a clinic and a creche on the farm and an after school. But for all the sustainability reasons, they found it an attractive option. And we're quite excited what the future will bring. Already our marketing director, who is my sister, has been to see them in Alsace and in the Loire, and I'm going in May. So this exchange of knowledge and expertise will be massive, and the ability for them to come in and invest, because a family business in the wine industry struggles to find enough capital to invest sufficiently to grow. And when you have a company like GCF behind you, the opportunity for investment and growth is huge. And this Villiera brand that we've created over 40 years will start flying now, and it will create more job opportunities and ensure sustainability of our business and a good future for our staff and for the charitable and green projects that we're involved with.
I was going to ask you if it was a tough emotional decision to cut ties to a degree, aside from the fact that you're still there for the next 3 years and possibly longer after that. I think you've kind of answered it already, because you do seem to be really upbeat and positive and vested in the way forward for this new partnership.
Dan, it's an emotional roller coaster, but at the same time, if you're working with the right partners, it can feel a lot different. So we have to understand that from next week on, it won't be our business. But at the same time, they're treating us as the experienced family members who will take this business forward. And we've overcome the emotional side, and it's really an interesting exercise with a massive amount of due diligence and work involved. But I think it's a massive feather in the cap of our family and what we've created, and also the South African wine industry and what the wine industry stands for here in the Cape. And it's not something new and unusual. There are quite a few good wine companies that have sold recently, particularly to the French. And if you look at countries like New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, France as well, there are lots of foreign owners that have come in and invested in the wine regions of the world. And it just depends who's got the money and where you want to go. But the wine industry is going towards an industry where bigger brands need to be created, where exposure around the world is important, and where companies that have access to finance can push those companies into greater recognition and better quality long-term and more long-term sustainability for those companies and brands.
With GCF having bought Neertlings off, with the Otto family having invested in Thai-Bosch and Pink Valley and Le Chant, with Advini being involved with Kleine Zalza, and with L'Avenir and with Ken Forrester, there's certainly many examples already of just the French, let alone other nations, having invested in our winelands, and it seems to be a growing trend and a very much a positive one. We'll get a little bit more nostalgia from Jeff in a moment, but let's leave South African shores and head to Europe. And if I told you, right, we are going to go and drink wine in Europe, you'd probably say, well, we're going to France, are we? No. Spain, no, not there either. Italy, no. Germany, Austria, neither of those. We are, in fact, going to Croatia. And there might be one or two you raising an eyebrow. In Croatia, do they make wine in Croatia? They played football and had nice beaches, and that was about it. Well, not only do they make wine, they make some extraordinary wine, and it's about to get better, because we've sent a top South African winemaker over to ensure that that's the case. Tim Whitfield, welcome to the show. Before we ask you about how you got to Croatia, give us a little background. What is the state of play of wine in Croatia? How big is it? How good is it?
Well, yeah, I'm getting used to the amount. Very small, very backyard alley type of neighbors when it comes to wine. But it's amazing. The people are just incredible. In terms of just being welcomed has been incredible. The wine is completely different to what we used to, and it's humbling, in all honesty. You think you know some little bit about wine, and then you realize you know even less. So it's incredibly interesting. But yeah, there's about 150 wineries in our region. Istria, which is in the northwest corner of Croatia, which is basically sharing a border between Slovenia and Italy. So as I explained slightly earlier backstage, this morning I hopped over to Slovenia, then went to Italy to get to the local wine shop when that was before 9 o'clock and my first cup of coffee. So yeah, it's an incredible industry, relatively old, but new in the sense that the industry is now investing slightly more. So yeah, change of scenery, but loving it so far. I've only been here for 2.5 weeks, so it's been a cracking 2.5 weeks.
You mentioned that it's very different to South Africa, to what you're used to. I presume part of that is in the varietals. Has that been the case? Is it full of all sorts of new and different and exotic grapes? And if so, how difficult has it been to get your head around all of them?
Yeah, remembering some of the names has been the hardest. But it's not like South Africa where you have an estate and everything's within a dirt road drive away. There's pockets of vineyards scattered all over the area, which I'm currently navigating, and it's been incredible. We focus mostly on Malvasia or Malvasia, depending on where you sit, and Refoshk. I think the only cultivar that I have some familiarity with is Merlot. It's a great learning curve, but I think mostly from a aspect of production. I'm used to traditional wine practices, and out here we focus on biodynamic wine farming, or should I say more regenerative wine farming. So we focus on making natural wines, but more about putting more back into the earth than what we're taking out. So it's a change of pace, and like I've kept being told by the owners and the neighbors, there's a term called Laganini, which means take it easy. So I think they're not used to my pace yet, but hopefully they'll adjust, or I'll adjust. Probably the latter.
I'm sure you'll find some nice middle ground somewhere in there in due course. The change has been from Plaisir to Croatia. How did the opportunity to come up, and how much persuasion did it take to convince yourself that this was a good idea?
Yeah, look, I mean, for the people that do know me, I'm as South African as South African can get. So it was quite a hard decision. But if you're looking at the world wine industry at the moment, there's a lot of movement towards the biodynamic and regenerative or natural, however you want to really look at it. But more the almost responsibility in the wine industry at the moment to be more natural, and how much you know about your own brands and what goes into it. So looking at that, it's a sector that I've always wanted to go into. Look, when you look at it, when I look back at it now, I guess I should have done it earlier, but I'm too young to be arrogant enough to think that I know what wines I would like to make, and which styles. So learn more, bring it back to South Africa possibly in a few years' time, 10 years, 8 years, 15 years, who knows? But see the world of wine. When you're right at the southern tip of the world, there's a lot more out there. So learn more, drink more, and hopefully remember some of it on the way.
It's an ever so slightly different route, in that so many of the winemakers we have on the show have worked in other parts of the world while they've been learning the ropes. They've done a harvest here, a summer there, and then come back and started a South African journey that's continued there on in. You have now said goodbye, at least for now, to South Africa and gone to Croatia. How much experience was there making wine beyond South Africa's borders before, and how good a stead has that put you in for being able to handle this new space?
Yeah, not enough, basically. But yeah, I spent about 5 months or 4 months in France prior to my stint at Spear briefly, and then I started working at Takara. So I think in terms of I almost want to say the wine industry, you're never going to have enough experience. But for this type of industry, I've got a lot of support. I've got a lot of phone a friend type of contacts, and I think it's you're never going to know enough until you're in it. So learn fast, and also try to understand more the vineyards than understanding. Not trying to force your way, but let the vineyards kind of say what they want. So I think I'm kind of learning that. At the same time, it's something that I think we will probably be doing a lot more in the future in terms of the wine industry. I know there's a lot of traction towards biodynamic movement. I mean, if you look at Romani Conti have moved that way. A few states, larger states in California have gone that way. So yeah, no better time than the present. to learn more. So I'm getting going that side, but it's a huge adjustment. I mean, I'm going from 400 hectares at Plaisir to 24 hectares, which is subdivided between olives and grapes. So yeah, definitely a slow learning curve. Yeah, that's my view from my office. Relatively quite nice.
Looks terrible.
Yeah, how that coffee seems to go a lot faster when you're drinking that view. But yeah, it's like you can see there just past the cloud berth. That's the Adriatic. So it's a 20 minutes drive, or actually less than that, 15-minute drive to the coast. Unfortunately, no surf. So I'm going to have to take up kite surfing or something like that. But yeah, it's an incredible estate, incredible owners. The owners are, focused on producing epic wines and not so much quantity. So the nice thing is they're giving me free range, and also, with the founder Giorgio Clay and the previous winemaker Dimitri, the three of us are trying to navigate the language barrier, but also trying to make sure that we get the best wine out. So I've got an epic team, and I'm really excited. I mean, it's once in a lifetime type of opportunity, and I just couldn't say no. So yeah.
Juggling grapes he's never heard of with a language he can't begin to speak. It's all fun for Tim at the moment. Let's head back to Denzel and to Zoetendal. I was having a look through the website. It's not an estate I've been to yet, but it's much like visiting Tim in Croatia. It's now very much on the cards to come visit you down, Denzel, in Zoetendal, because you've got a lovely, lovely spot. And it's more than just the wine that you are promoting and selling and talking about. You've got a great place to come and stay and visit and hang out in. Tell me a little bit about more Zoetendal and about the offering that you have.
Yeah, then I think one realized that it's not so close to Cape Town, so you can't just drive up and down. So what Zoetendal has is the beautiful manor house, which we've sort of revamped into a very luxury boutique style rooms and hotel style. And that overlooks the Villiera River, which is just running past the farm. And that's the kind of view that you see from the rooms. But also we have a restaurant and a tasting room on the premises. So you can come out, you can dine at the restaurant, have your wine tasting, and then just enjoy the beautiful view. And if you're very adventurous, you can go and kayak on the river, or you can hop onto one of the mountain bikes and just go for a ride into the or down Elm Road.
We heard a moment ago about Tim talking about getting to know his new home and his new space. What's that been like for you, discovering this area of the world, discovering more about not just Zoetendal, but the space around it and the people who live there?
Yeah, then I think that was very important. That the first thing I said is, once I'm start, I need to go and visit my neighbors and understand what they're doing. And especially knowing that the Agulhas wine triangle is quite vast. So the farms are quite far from each other, belonging to one sort of collaborative association. And I started yesterday, I went down to the farm. This morning, I already had my first visit at Black Oyster Catcher with Dirk, and just walking around the farm and understanding what they're doing, so that we eventually in future collaborate a little bit more, so that the offering to guests is not just your own farm, but is the offering of the region, and through that also promoting the South African wine industry. So I think that's critically important. And the Agulhas wine triangle is really exciting place. I mean, if you think of Lemont in the region, you have Strandveld there. Guys that's not under radar, which is the Sanders brothers at Sondagkloof. They're sitting in that region. So there's quite a lot to do and a lot to learn from the region, except that in Stellenbosch you get a considerable lot of quite nice weather, where in Elam it can get quite windy.
It does add to the beauty of it, though. There is a wonderfully raw and natural sense to the triangle. I was out there last year and not just got to see the places, but see the people. You've got everybody from Pierre Rabhi and his famous beard. Mr. Human's beard's not too bad either. You've got Bruce Jack, you've got Suzanne and wines, the cheese making. So you've got this wonderful community of people, and they in turn form the backbone of this wine triangle. Where does that sit in terms of your drive and your mandate to promote the area? Are you getting on board with everybody else and really looking to continue to drive this sense of the Agulhas Triangle as both a wine destination and an area people should be looking out for the quality of wine?
Then I think that was the first thing I said when the farmer approached me. I kind of asked, are we associated to the wine triangle? Are we associated to certain bodies of styles of wines that we're making? Because in South Africa, we need to realize that it's going to take South Africa and the wine industry holistically to create a better image of South African wines. And if we're talking about the quality wines and getting the right prices for wines, we all need to start working together to promote our wines and take that further. And that's pretty much, I mean, if one thing about what Australia does and how they've kind of come around each other to promote Australian wines, that is what we need to do if we really want to start pushing South African wines and the quality of excellence that we have in the country.
The wine that you have in particular, though, will be the specific focus, and I have some of it here, headlined by the Monarch, which I'm going to ask you about in a moment. The delivery that came through from Zoetendal earlier in the week, though, I had not one but 2 bottles of Sauvignon Blanc. Not terribly surprising, given how much great Sauvignon Blanc comes from the area. I think in particular of the 10-year-old Black Oyster Catcher that did so well at the recent Wine Mag report, 92 points for a 10-year-old Sauvignon Blanc. It's a natural home to Sauvignon Blanc as an area. You've got 2 of them. Tell me a little bit about those 2 wines, what makes them different and what helps them to stand out.
Yeah, Dan, so I think what was important is we wanted to showcase what ELM does give very well, and Sauvignon Blanc sits very well in that area. But in our offering, we were quite clear in terms of making a style of Sauvignon Blanc which is slightly more fuller, which kind of resembles what Dirk is doing with his 10-year-old, a Sauvignon Blanc that you can put away and age slightly, and that is the limited release Sauvignon Blanc. And then we have a Sauvignon Blanc that's slightly on the more fruitier side, very easy drinking, quite playful, and that's the 2 Sauvignon Blancs that we have at the estate. So one for the sort of entry drinker that just loves the Sauvignon Blanc that is fruit-driven, expressive, quite clean, and one that is a little bit more fuller, rounder, that definitely requires or asking for aging, but also saying, listen, bring some food and enjoy me.
All right. Well, I will do exactly that. I'll just book my tickets and we'll do. I want to talk though about this particular one. I think there was a Shannon in there, but I'm interested in the Monarch because you've got here a wine that's got the 5 classical Bordeaux blend elements. It's Cab Sauv and it's Cab Franc and Merlot and Malbec and a bit of Petit Verdot. You've also thrown in some Shiraz, though. It's not an unusual blend in South Africa. We're seeing a little more of it. Something like the Nicholas from Zoetendal is exactly that kind. But for where you are, it's perhaps a little different because we tend to think of stuff that is a little more lighter, elegant, prone to taking advantage of a cooler climate and the sort of breezes which you've mentioned a little earlier. And so things like a lighter style like a Pinot Noir or a style of Pinotage or Syrah that's a little gentler. Here you've got something that is built up of the components that are often a slightly bigger wine. So tell me about the style of this and about how the Monarch came to be the headline act.
Yeah, so then we have a small block of Shiraz on the estate that does extremely well. And when we looked at it, the volumes of Shiraz that we could make from it at that stage wasn't big enough to really have a wine that will be our flagship Shiraz on the estate. So it was natural to kind of use that Shiraz and build it into another style of wine, and Bordeaux style is one of the things that the owners love quite well. And so they said, why don't we use our Shiraz in this blend? So the wine is built of majority Shiraz, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and very small little bits of the Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec in it. But I think for the style of the wine, we said we wanted a clarity profile of wine, needs to have a bit of broad shoulders, but very elegant. And I think the Monarchs showcase that beautiful dark fruits that you would find quite generally in a Bordeaux style, but then sort of the spiciness, the coffee character coming through because of the oak usage. And then the beautiful, quite elegant tenon to the wine. So the wine is ready to drink now, but I would recommend that you keep this wine for another 6-7 years. The wine is just going to really become quite beautiful as it gets older.
6-7 years is a long time to hang on to it, but I will do that with another bottle that I'll have to get hold of because this one's open, to hang on to it, to ask you a question in 6 or 7 years' time. And that'll be the question to see if you've made good on what I'm about to ask you now, which is, in 6-7 years' time, what would the Denzel Swarts legacy be? What would you have liked to have done for Zoetendal in particular and the Agulhas wine triangle more generally?
Yeah, I think, Dan, I really want to assist the brand broadening the offering that we have of wines. So already planning on releasing a Shiraz, because that is what the area is quite well known for as well. But to also see, I have a love for bubbly, so I would love to see a Cap Classique being added to the range to broaden the offering on that side. But I really want us to grow Zoetendal in the market, maybe push our current volumes, which is just over 11,000. In the next 7 years, I would want to be between about 40 and 60,000 bottles. Still relatively small, and keeping it very small and niche, and focus in terms of the triangle. We need to get more visitors out into the Agulhas wine route. And so if I can assist with bringing in more tourists, expanding the offerings that we can give from our side at Zoetendal, I would love to do that. I think if one thinks back 10, 15 years ago, what Swartland did with their offering, I believe, and I truly believe, that the Agulhas wine triangle is on the right track to also bring in more people and deliver a very similar offering. From the Denzel side, I want to believe that this appointment, the current appointment of my role at Zoetendal, would inspire other farm young people who is currently working as general workers or who's in school and want to enter the wine space to realize that there's no limit to their ability to study further and to enter the wine industry at the higher level up. I've always talked about that, and I'm a big advocate for people of color to start stepping up and do their thing and showcase their excellence in the industry and build an industry that is inclusive and diverse, not just in people, in skill, but also in the wine styles that we have, and to offer a very, or to broaden sort of the narrative of how do you drink and how do you enjoy wine. When you're sitting in the township or you're sitting at the farmhouse and you've grown up with pap and boerewors and chakalaka, there's a wine that can go with that, and you can enjoy it with that. You don't need to go and look for a very particular cuisine to enjoy wine with. And I think that is what we need to do. We need to promote the fact that you can drink with various, or drink wine with various styles of food, and especially be true to the authenticity. If you love your chicken feet with certain sauces, do that. There's a wine for that. Explore. Don't be too close up.
It's such an important element of the wine world going forward, especially in South Africa. And Denzel's just the man to help push that forward. 21 years ago, a general worker part-time while not studying at Simmonsburg, now the brand and sales executive at Zoetendal, which is very lucky to have him. We see what his future is. Jeff, what about you? You've got the 3 years. Do you see it lasting longer than that? Or are there perhaps still other itches to scratch in the wine industry?
Yeah, Dan, that's a great question. Look, I'm excited about working in this environment for 3 years, and that's what I've committed to. By then I'll be close to 70, so I do have some other itches to scratch. I'm an enthusiastic golfer. I know you also play quite a lot of golf, so there's a little addiction there. But wine is my first love. And I could even stay on. I'm sure these guys are quite keen for the Griers to continue being a part of their business, whether it's me and my generation or the next generation. I think opportunities in the future of Villiera will continue to arise. But I've got lots of travel itches, and as I said, I need to improve my handicap a little bit, but it's going to have to wait for another 3 years.
As you look at the future, there's also the past to look back on, and the reason why you are going to be such a valuable asset to the new owners is because of your rich and peerless understanding of Villiera and the Stellenbosch wine scene as a whole. Is it possible, tough and nasty question, I know, but is it possible to look back over the 4 decades or thereabouts and pick a couple of highlights, pick a couple of wines from certain vintages where you think back, you still go, sure, that was Jeff at his best?
Yeah, I mean, that is a tough question, but the main highlights basically revolve around sparkling wine, and I remember getting my first sort of platter 5-star in 86 or 87, I think it was, for a vintage Cup Classique. But we also made a Munro Brut that won a trophy at the International Wine and Spirit competition, which my son went to fetch at an award ceremony there. And then I also remember making a Munro Brut that was actually the best wine overall at remember the Tri-Nations. I think it's now the 5 Nations Southern Hemisphere sort of competition. But when it was still the Tri-Nations, we made a sparkling wine that was actually the best wine on show. And, those highlights really come through. I also remember being John Platter's Wine Man of the Year, which was admittedly long ago when there was less competition, but it was a real highlight. And those kind of things really do help to inspire you. I also remember, we've actually just been purchased by a French company, but I remember in the early days having a French consultant that basically helped us with establishing the quality levels and the standards in our Cup Classique operation. And as a result, I went to France often, and my father was fluent in French. So we had a lot of connection with France, even during the years when South Africans couldn't travel that much. And we ended up buying a vineyard in France in 2006. And that was quite a highlight for me. I was about 50 at the time, so it was my sort of midlife crisis. And we went and bought a place in France, and it was the opposite. There was a South African investing in France, and now we've come full circle, and the French have bought it back from us. And it's mainly because the next generation of Grier weren't able to get their act together to go and study enough French to take over our French business. They should have seen that little item that you had on the Alliance Française teaching French for wine people. That might have helped them. But yeah, I mean, it's my journey in the wine industry is full of highlights. And as the two other guys on your podcast tonight will know, there are also some scary moments and some moments where you think the end is nigh. But the wine industry has a massive number of really good people that pick you up when you're down. But I've actually had a wonderful journey in the wine industry, and I actually hope to continue it even after semi-retiring in 3 years' time. And as you mentioned, I still have a massive role to play in the wine industry, on the Cup Classique Association, on the Chenin Blanc Association, and in some of the other wine categories, including the Stellenbosch regional activities. So I'm going nowhere, and I plan to stay in Stellenbosch. We do have a little place in Stanford, which was put on the map even more so recently by a little drive-through by the Epic Riders. But we like going down to Stanford. But there's wine all around us there as well. So wine is very much going to be part of my life until I can't taste anymore.
Well, we wouldn't want it any other way, and I'm very glad that there is still that joy in the wine industry, which sparkles as you talk about it. Just quickly before we head back to Croatia and wrap up the show, in terms of the nature of the Villiera offering, I think of decisions that we made in other estates where new wines have come in, some wines have gone out. You mentioned focus here on the bubbles and the acquisition. Will the still wine still be made? Will the French domain still produce wine? Are there any major changes you are anticipating?
Dan, we still have to see how things pan out, but the current approach is to build the bubbly side of our business and to expand that. And investment will start this year in growing that side of our business. But GCF are pretty aware of the fact that we make really good Chenin. And in fact, while Provine was happening a couple of weeks ago, Kathy, my sister, was there, and she picked up an international trophy for best barrel fermented Sauvignon at the Mondial du Sauvignon Blanc. So GCF are pretty aware of the fact that we make some good Sauvignon, even though it comes from Stellenbosch. And Denzel will tell me that the best Sauvignon comes from the Agulhas Triangle or from Elam. I know Durban will make some good Sauvignon. I'm a big fan of cool climate Sauvignon. But if you touch it up with a bit of oaking and so on, you can make quite serious Sauvignon Blancs here in Stellenbosch and Chenin. Much the same goes for Chenin. A little bit of oak does help to drive the quality. So we're going to continue focusing on Sauvignon and Chenin. And as you know, we do really well with Merlot. We have a reserve Merlot called Munro Merlot and our regular Merlot. And that product will continue to be made here. But some of our wines will move to Neertlingshof because they will focus more on the reds, and we'll focus more on the bubbly. And I think it will allow our winemakers and our whole team to be more focused and to utilize equipment and facilities more effectively. So we have to actually tend towards greater focus. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to France in May to see all the different bubbly investments that GCF have in the Loire, in Alsace, in Savoie. And they also have investments in bubbly in Claret de Die and further south. But I'm going to be talking to a lot of their winemakers on the bubbly side and hope to gain knowledge. Of course, there's always knowledge to gain. And I'm probably the oldest winemaker on the whole GCF team, so they can learn from me too. But we'll exchange information for sure.
I think it's a huge opportunity for a lot of French winemakers. They're suddenly going to get an almighty education on the art of bubbles from Jeff. Let's wrap up in Croatia and jump back to Tim, who's wrapping his tongue around a new language, amongst other things. Culture shock settling in, or is it being quite a simple, warm, gentle introduction to life in Croatia?
Yeah, it's been a. I would say it's a. I don't know about gentle. I didn't have luggage for the first week, but they have they have braais out here, which is fantastic. So at least that's a little bit of home. But like Jeff was mentioning, I've also taken to a bit of golf. So there's a golf course quite close by to here. So it's been great. Adjusting is hard. I think, whether you move 60 kilometers or, a couple thousand, it'll take some time, but I'm not too worried. The people have been amazing. The place is gorgeous. And the wines that I've tasted so far have been incredible. So really no negatives besides the fact that, it's slightly more difficult to get what Denzel was talking about, which is the pup and Vos. But hopefully I can, make some homemade. But good so far.
Talking about getting hold of stuff, tell me about your shopping trip earlier on today, where you just nipped down to the shops to grab something.
Nip down to the shops. One of the better wine shops is in Italy. I did 3 countries: so Croatian border, Slovenia, and then Italy in Trieste. It's an incredible spot. I mean, I'm a 2.5-hour drive to Venice. I'm a 3.5-hour drive to Austria. I'm actually going to Vienna in a month's time. Jeff, when you're in France, there's a golf course close by. So shout. It's weird. When you look on a map, it looks so far away, but when you drive, it's quick. But obviously, driving is quite tough because I'm on the left-hand side, of the car, and on the right-hand side of the road. So when you wake up early in the mornings and you look at this chop that's driving on the wrong side of the road, that chop is me.
Whatever dismay you cause on the roads, you will more than make up with for your production in the cellar. What is on the horizon? What are you making? When is your harvest? How do things work for you in Croatia?
Yeah, so harvest is in August. We start off with our bubbly, which is a plavina, and it's quite an interesting process. Because it's biodynamic, bubbly becomes quite interesting. So we don't use any added yeast. So we make our own yeast culture for the re-fermentation or for the tirage. So lots to learn. But that starts off with that, and then we move on to the Malvasia, and that takes quite a long time because it ripens in certain areas. And then we move on to Teran, Merlot, and Refoshk, which is Refoshk. From what I've been tasting, has been incredible. It's a lovely grape. The Teran is gorgeous. Teran kind of reminds me more of a Shiraz crossed with a Cabernet in some weird way, but elegant as all hell, if that can make sense. And the Refoshk is just an incredible grape. It can be high in tannin but low in tannin. It can be made into its lighter style or heavier style. But we finished with the Refoshk. There's a great little spot which everyone talks about in the area. It's called Sveti Jakov is the vineyard name, but Castagnari is a hill, and it's in a gorgeous little area. But we finish off there, and it's 11 and a half, 12 hectares, which takes a period of a month and a half. So very exciting stuff. But ultra small scale, everything by hand. We pick in the morning, we process in the afternoon, in the cold. So it's just awesome. The people that I buy coffee from are the people that are going to come and help me pick the grapes. And we've got a restaurant here as well as a large estate, villa if you want to call it that. So they pop in. It's just an awesome little community.
and one you're clearly settling into. We're going to ask you to send us some of your first vintage so we can get you back on the show and taste some Croatian wine. And you've got many vintages to make, I'm sure. But I'll go back as we close today's show to a comment you made right at the start about coming back to South Africa. As it stands, and who knows what happens in Croatia for now, but as it stands, would that still be the vision that 10, 15 years from now, you are back in South Africa, back on one estate or another, and return to home armed with a love of Croatia and some vintages under your belt, but happily return to the country you call home?
100%. I mean, I'm a South African gets, as I said earlier, and also, learning Europe, I guess, in this instance, I can bring back quite a bit. And also the South African industry will obviously developed. But I just look forward to coming back, with a whole different look on the wine industry. Count me in. So can't wait. But for now, enjoying the Croatian sun as you guys go into winter. So I currently have not had a winter in a while. So I'll rub that in a bit later. But I can't wait to be back.
Well, 10, 15 years' time, Jeff Grier might be deciding to hang up his boots by then. So there could be an opening for you at Villiera. There'll be many others competing, I'm sure, by then to have you back. But until then, good luck with settling in, Tim, and with mastering Croatian. We'll do the next show entirely in Croat. Good luck too to Denzel with this new stint at Zoetendal. And I can see from the energy to you that it's one you're going to be jumping into with such excitement. And Jeff, a really interesting time too. I think you are an example of a number of estates that have taken a similar path over the last little while, and the fact that there are countries, and especially France, wanting to put money into our South African wine space is a really, really good sign, but also one that reflects pretty well on the people who've taken the estates into a position where this sort of investment is deemed appropriate. So all three of you, good luck with the journeys to come. Have a lot of fun. And we'll have you all back soon to see how your respective adventures are playing out.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Vala.
Vala, indeed. So there we go. Tim Whitfield, our first ever Croatian winemaker, almost on the show, to Denzel Swarts out at Zoetendal, as well as Jeff Grier at a really important juncture in the life of Villiera, but also I think for South African wine. It's a big player that's come in for first Neertlingshof and then Villiera, and that shows there's a lot of interest in investing in South African wine. That wraps us up for today. I see Daryl Balfour has chipped in at the end. Good luck there, Tim. Looking forward to some new wines from there over here. If anyone in South Africa's got Croatian wine in their cellar, it's almost certainly Daryl, but he will want to add some more from a South African winemaker, as will we all. That wraps us up for today. Have a lovely, lovely Easter weekend. Do enjoy it. And we will see you on Monday when we are connecting with London and Gareth Ferreira, the South African sommelier extraordinaire, now at Claire Smith's Core Restaurant, and he'll be joining us with his partner Clayton Foster, as well as another sommelier, Roger, who's working with them, and Ian Nordeer, the winemaker who's produced 1,100 bottles only of a Chenin Blanc that starts a new arm to the career of Gareth Ferreira as he brings out his very first wine. So to London on Monday. Until then, enjoy the rest of your evening, enjoy your Easter weekend. We'll see you back here next week. Goodbye.